Medusa was the daughter of the primordial sea gods, Perseus and Ceto. Medusa was the youngest of three sisters, and together they were called the Gorgons, Medusa, Steno, and Uriel. All three were greatly feared, for their appearance was terrifying and nauseating, and they had the bad reputation of being evil beings, except for Medusa. Although Medusa was the only mortal of the sisters, she was a beautiful woman, and her beauty was praised by mortals and gods throughout her life, for it was said that no one on earth possessed such beauty, whereas her sisters possessed a truly terrifying appearance. In time, Medusa became a faithful devotee of the goddess Athena, and along with her sisters and her best friend Iphicles, she would play pretend to be the goddess Athena. She deeply admired Athena, so much so that she actually wished to be like her. She spent her childhood surrounded by adventures with her best friend Iphicles. She grew up in a home full of happiness, and when she grew up, she had grown into a beautiful woman, with her admirable beauty shocking anyone who saw her. Medusa fervently wished to become a priestess and belong to the temple of the great goddess, and she said that when she was old enough to do so, she would give up everything to be part of the temple. On the other hand, Iphicles, Medusa's best friend, spent every day very close to the young girl, so he inevitably fell deeply in love with Medusa. Iphicles had kept his feelings to himself for many years, as they were still too young to enter into a relationship, and he believed that Medusa might not reciprocate. One day, both went for a walk as usual, and amid laughter the two stood face to face, staring at each other with loving eyes, and in that moment, Iphicles took the opportunity to confess his love to Medusa. The young man, very nervous, told Medusa that he loved her deeply and that he wished to be by her side for all eternity. The beautiful maiden with a big smile on her face told him, "I love you too," and hugged him tightly. However, as soon as she took off from his arms, Medusa erased her smile, and touching his face she said seriously, "But our love can never be. I can never be with you because there is something that I wish with all my being." The beautiful young woman took Iphicles to the temple of Athena and told him, "I long to become a priestess of the great goddess Athena, and to belong I must be pure and not fall into temptations." Iphicles loved Medusa so much that he decided to support her in her great dream. He understood that the happiness of the beautiful woman was the most important thing to him. In time, Medusa reached the ideal age when she could begin to prepare herself to be a priestess of Athena, and so she went to the temple to give herself eternally to her, for the goddess. Little by little, the hard teachings of the new aspirants in the temple of Athena began. The young women had to have absolute purity to appear before the great goddess of wisdom because Athena herself was pure. The preparation to belong to the temple of Athena was too demanding. The apprentices had to go through hard tests where they had to demonstrate their discipline, wisdom, exemplary conduct, and purity. Medusa achieved her lifelong dream and became a respected priestess. The beautiful woman was really committed to her job, so she was catalogued as a perfect priestess because her conduct and discipline were impressive. Over the years, the beautiful priestess began to gain fame among the devotees who attended the temple of Athena. The great beauty of Medusa captivated all the men who watched her, while she performed the sacred rituals in the temple. With her beautiful face, slender figure, and extremely shiny and precious hair, Medusa had caught many by her charms. These admirers knew that the beautiful young woman would never reciprocate, and so they only admired and honored her from afar. Little by little, in the land, the news that a beautiful young woman was attending the temple of Athena spread rapidly, causing more and more people to attend the temple of the goddess, just to observe the beautiful priestess. The devotees who attended the temple of Athena were more and more insistent in denoting the beauty and perfection of Medusa because they were not only amazed with how beautiful she was, but also admired the perfect way in which she performed the various rituals and activities in the temple. On the other hand, from Mount Olympus, Athena was watching everything that happened in her temple, and observed with great stealth what was happening with respect to Medusa. One day, while Medusa was performing the daily rituals in the temple of the goddess, thousands of devotees arrived. Athena was pleased and flattered, and she immediately fixed her gaze on her temple as she sat down to watch herself being glorified by thousands of people. However, from the crowd, a man shouted in a loud voice, "Medusa, you are much more beautiful than Athena, even your hair is much more beautiful." Furious, Athena realized that the crowd was not at her temple to worship her, but had come to the sanctuary only to see one of her faithful priestesses, the lovely Medusa. Athena thought that conspiring against the devotees who came to her temple was not the right thing to do. Besides, she knew that Medusa was not to blame for what was happening, since she did not do it on purpose. So at that moment she did nothing against her supposed devotees, nor against Medusa, and she dedicated herself to observe with bitterness, since her worship was being overshadowed by the beautiful priestess. All the gods of Olympus witnessed what was happening in the temple of Athena, and full of curiosity for the beautiful young woman, they had planted their gaze on her. Poseidon observed the dissatisfaction of Athena and immediately believed that it was the right time to execute his revenge because for a long time both gods maintained multiple disputes for sovereignty. Poseidon and Athena had had a terrible confrontation in which they disputed the capital city of the Attica region. Both wanted to be the great rulers of the city, and they wanted their people to revere them. However, after a great confrontation, Athena won the battle, keeping the beautiful city of Cecropia, which was later baptized with the name of Athens, in honor of the goddess. Since that terrible quarrel in the past, Poseidon wished to take revenge on the goddess, and although many years had passed, he never forgot the hatred he felt towards Athena. Poseidon saw how the goddess had all the attention on his most faithful and exemplary priestess. So he immediately began to devise a plan that would tarnish the reputation of Medusa and at the same time that of Athena. Athena was too demanding with her priestesses since what they did and presented to their followers strongly influenced her reputation, so she did not want any mistakes of her priestesses to stain her honor. The god of the seas thought that the most exemplary of the priestesses would be the instrument of his revenge. He would make Athena's reputation be torn to shreds, thus taking revenge on the goddess, by destroying her through Medusa. Poseidon watched Medusa stealthily for several days, delicately analyzing all her movements so as to attack her at the right moment. He spent hours and hours building his plan, and even the god himself was enchanted by the beauty of the young woman. One day Medusa, as usual, went for a walk on the beach, when suddenly she heard a deep voice calling her name. Frightened, Medusa looked in all directions, and saw how an imposing and slender being emerged from the waters. It was the god Poseidon. At that moment Medusa was totally paralyzed, and while Poseidon tried to seduce her, the innocent young woman tried to reject his advances. Poseidon, with flattery and deception, tried to get hold of the young girl. However, Medusa did not forget her vows, so she flatly refused to have relations with the god. Despite the great reputation of Poseidon, Medusa would not give up being a priestess of Athena. Full of fury, Poseidon took her forcefully by the arm, and told her that she would not be there to decide, and that he would make her his in that moment. Filled with fear, Medusa tried to break free from the god's arms, and with a great blow to his face, she managed to escape in desperation. Medusa was terrified by the presence of the god, and cried out for help as she made her way to the temple of Athena, the only place where she felt safe. However, Poseidon did not give up and filled with desire, followed the beautiful young woman to the temple. With tears in her eyes, Medusa implored the protection of her goddess. Kneeling at the feet of the statue of Athena, she cried out for help. Meanwhile, Poseidon entered the temple, and as soon as he saw Medusa kneeling on one side of the altar of Athena, his lust blinded him. Quickly, he ran to the young woman and grabbed her forcefully, who was trying her best to flee but unsuccessful in doing so. There, at the altar of Athena, Poseidon violated the most faithful of his rival's priestesses. Afterwards, Poseidon slowly walked away from the temple, leaving totally stained the sanctuary and the temple of Athena, of which the goddess was proud for its purity. He also left Medusa, Athena's best devotee and priestess, completely devastated. When Athena saw what had happened, she went to her temple, and full of fury, she blamed Medusa for desecrating her immaculate temple. Athena told Medusa that she with her exuberance and vanity had caused men to harass her, and blamed her for the abuse that Poseidon committed against her. After hearing the harsh words of the goddess, Medusa felt ashamed and guilty. Athena could not control her fury against Medusa, so she decided to punish her forever, and so the goddess turned her into a monstrous and horrifying being, just like her sisters. In addition, Aphrodite took advantage of the occasion and transformed her beautiful hair into poisonous snakes. Medusa wept disconsolately on the floor of the temple. She did not know what to do, for she was no longer pure, and her appearance was truly terrifying. At night, Iphicles went searching for his beloved Medusa, for atrocious rumors were surrounding the young girl, so he decided to visit her. As soon as he entered the temple, he found her lying on the floor, weeping bitterly. Iphicles called out to her, and with words of comfort he slowly approached her. Medusa cried out to him, telling him to not come near, as she did not wish for him to see what she had become. Iphicles did not listen and continued to approach her, until he reached her shoulder. Iphicles touched Medusa's shoulder and suddenly received a large bite. Medusa, frightened, immediately stood up and looked straight into the eyes of Iphicles, who had immediately turned to stone. Medusa was terrified. She did not understand what had just happened. She embraced the figure of her friend and screamed in despair, for she could not believe what she had caused. Realizing what she was condemned to, Medusa decided to escape from the city and fled in desperation. People who saw her would shout atrocities at her terrible appearance, so it was inevitable that the young woman would not return to see them, also turning them into mere stone statues. Medusa was hiding among trees so as not to be seen by anyone. However, the news had already spread that a horrendous creature was petrifying and terrorizing people. The townspeople were full of anger, and they all gathered picks, spears, and torches to go searching for the beast and kill it. All the men who went to hunt Medusa never returned, until days later they were found, having been turned into stone. Everyone in Athens was terrified since the terrible monster could finish them off with just a look. Medusa, after seeing the unscrupulous persecution against her, decided to flee to a distant city where no one had lived for many years. There she spent a long time alone, full of sadness and pain. Over time, her delicate and charming humanity faded away, and she became more and more frightening and hostile. For years, many soldiers and warriors went searching for the dreaded monster, but no one ever returned. According to one version of the myth, Medusa became pregnant by Poseidon, which infuriated Athena, causing her to look for the warrior Perseus, to have him assassinate her. Athena would have equipped Perseus with several divine objects to undertake his journey and not be turned to stone like the others. Perseus reached the Hyperborean lands where Medusa was wandering, and stealthily spied on her so he would know when to attack her. Full of fear, he decided to wait until the monstrous creature fell asleep. When night came and Medusa was fast asleep, Perseus crept up to her, and with his sharp sword, decapitated her. He took Medusa's head, blood dripping unceasingly, and from that blood emerged the sons of Medusa, Pegasus and Chrysaor. Perseus, feeling victorious, returned to the goddess Athena and as proof of his bravery, handed her the head of Medusa. The goddess, dismayed, took it and put it on her shield, where it is said that it remained forever, for it still possessed the dark powers of turning people to stone.